Grand Admiral Vextel of the Imperial Diplomatic Corps had seen primitive worlds before. He had witnessed the trembling delegates, the desperate offers of tribute, the feudal military posturing that always collapsed when faced with the full majesty of the Imperial Armada. He had expected more of the same when his flagship, the Sovereign's Will, emerged from hyperspace above the blue-green marble designated Earth. What he did not expect was laughter. The human delegation arrived in a vessel so unremarkable it could have been mistaken for a cargo hauler. 6 individuals emerged onto the observation deck of the Sovereign's Will, their environmental suits primitive by imperial standards, their expressions confused. Vextel began his prepared address. People of Earth, by the authority of Emperor Thalcresh, eternal ruler of the known systems, you are hereby. The human at the front of the delegation, a tall figure whose identification badge read Ambassador Kieran, looked at the holographic projection of the Imperial fleet, 47 warships, 13 carriers, and the Sovereign's Will herself, a dreadnought capable of cracking planetary crusts, and made a sound Vextel had never heard from a species facing annihilation. He laughed. It started as a snort, a strange expelling of air through nostrils that seemed entirely involuntary. Then it grew, his shoulders shaking, his eyes squeezing shut, his mouth opening wide to emit a series of barking exhalations that echoed through the observation deck's acoustic systems. His companions joined him. One of them, a shorter individual whose face was half covered in scars, gripped the railing as if she might collapse. Another pointed at the holographic display and choked out something in their guttural language. Ambassador Kieran managed to compose himself long enough to speak. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice still trembling with whatever emotion was consuming him. "I'm so sorry. It's just," he gestured at the display, "that's really your fleet." Vextel's mandibles clicked in irritation. "This is no jest, human. You face the assembled might of the Galactic Empire. Your world will be added to our dominion. Your species will serve." The laughter redoubled. The human woman with the scars now had tears streaming down her face. The others were clutching each other for support. Vextel glanced at his tactical officer, whose chromatophores had drained to a pale green of confusion. No species in the Empire's 15,000-year history had reacted to conquest with mirth. "Explain," Vextel demanded, his voice dropping to the register he used before orbital bombardments. Ambassador Kieran wiped his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to compose himself. "I apologize, Grand Admiral, truly. It's just, we've been expecting you. You were aware of our approach. Oh, we've known about the Empire for decades. Your expansion patterns are actually quite predictable. The expansion across the Sagittarius Arm, the absorption of the Krell Protectorate, well, you get the idea." Vextel felt his secondary heart quicken. "Then why did you not prepare? Why is your defense fleet merely 12 vessels of crude construction?" The laughter started again, but this time Kieran seemed almost apologetic. "Those aren't our defense fleet, Admiral. Those are the ships we use to haul garbage to our star's corona. We didn't think you'd actually. We thought you'd at least look at our system's energy readings before." He dissolved into giggles again. Vextel accessed the initial survey data. The humans had been classified as a Type 4 civilization, barely capable of interplanetary travel, technologically primitive, culturally fragmented. The energy readings had shown minimal output. Then his tactical officer spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Admiral, the energy readings have been updated. The humans are radiating at a level consistent with a Type 8 civilization." "Impossible. Type 8 was theoretical. The Empire was Type 6. "Show me," Vextel demanded. The holographic display shifted, and suddenly the solar system bloomed with energy signatures that had been hidden behind passive stealth fields. Orbital platforms, planetary defense grids, what appeared to be a massive structure forming around their sun. The laughter continued behind him. "We call it the Dyson Swarm," Kieran said, his voice now calm. We started building it after the Xylos conquered tried to conquer us. That was, oh, about 70 years ago in your time. They were Type 7, very impressive, very condescending. Vextel turned slowly. The Xylos conquered was destroyed. Destroyed is such a strong word. We prefer reorganized. They have a lovely little planet in the Cygnus system now. We visit sometimes. Their cuisine is excellent. The tactical officer's voice had become a squeak. Admiral, the stealth fields are still resolving. There are 14,000 more energy signatures. Some of them are moving. Vextel did not laugh. He did not weep. He simply stared at the human ambassador, whose smile had become something far more terrifying than mockery. It was acceptance, and in that acceptance, Vextel saw the truth that had been hidden by centuries of imperial arrogance. The humans weren't primitive. They had simply been waiting. Grand Admiral Vextel had survived 37 orbital campaigns, 2 assassination attempts by his own command staff, and the personal displeasure of Emperor Thalcresh on 3 separate occasions. None of those experiences had prepared him for the sound of humanity laughing at his entire civilization. The laughter had expanded beyond the observation deck. It had leaked through the diplomatic channels that connected the sovereign's will to Earth's surface, and now the global broadcast networks of the human homeworld were filled with what the Empire's cultural analysts could only describe as mass hilarity. Vextel watched the footage on a secondary display. Humans of every age, every physical variation, every social stratum, all of them laughing. Some pointed at their screens. Some clutched their stomachs. Some collapsed entirely, unable to breathe. And every single one of them was looking at the magnificent holographic projection of his fleet. What is wrong with them? Vextel demanded of his diplomatic staff, who had gathered in the command center with expressions ranging from bewilderment to genuine fear. His cultural liaison, a slender Xylian named Prax, offered an assessment. The laughter appears to be genuine, Admiral. The humans are not mocking us in the traditional sense. Their physiological responses suggest emotional release, catharsis. Catharsis for what? Prax consulted his data pad. The humans have been anticipating our arrival for approximately 3 generations. Their historical records show extensive preparation for contact with hostile interstellar powers, war games, strategic planning, civil defense drills. They appear to have been waiting for the worst. And they greet it with laughter. One of the human delegates had pulled up an image on their own portable display. Vextel squinted at it, a crude animation of a creature with multiple limbs, waving a red flag, while text scrolled beneath in the human's blocky script. The humans on the observation deck noticed him looking. Ambassador Kieran gestured to the screen. "Oh, that's a meme. We have billions of them. That one's about the Empire's demands." It translates roughly to "No one expects the Spanish Inquisition," which you probably won't understand because the Spanish Inquisition was an Earth historical event that, he paused, then laughed again. "Never mind, you just had to be there." Another of his companions murmured something, and the humans began trading what appeared to be inside jokes. Vextel heard phrases like death flags and foreshadowing, and something that sounded like, did they really bring 10 million troops for 3 billion people? Vextel's tactical officer finally found his voice. "Admiral, the humans are not taking us seriously. This is an unprecedented breach of diplomatic protocol. We should withdraw and prepare for." "No," Vextel interrupted. The word came out harder than he intended, sharp enough to make the officer flinch. "If we withdraw now, we admit weakness. This is a psychological tactic. They are trying to unsettle us." "Are we unsettled?" Prax asked, with what Vextel could only interpret as genuine curiosity. Vextel looked around the command center. His officers, veterans of 100 campaigns, all had the same expression: uncertainty, fear, even. They had faced enemies who raged, enemies who begged, enemies who fought to the last and died screaming. They had never faced enemies who welcomed them with open arms and helpless laughter. "The laughter," Vextel said slowly, "must stop. Contact Earth's global command. Demand to speak with someone who will take this seriously. It took 3 minutes for the connection to establish. When it did, Vextel found himself facing a screen filled with human military officers, a dozen of them, of varying ages and appearances, all of them visibly struggling to maintain composure. One of them, a heavy-set individual with a broad face and a uniform covered in what appeared to be decorative ribbons, cleared his throat. "Admiral Vextel, I'm General Ackerman, Earth Defense Command. I apologize for the general atmosphere down here. It's been a long time coming. You find our arrival amusing." "Find it?" The general's eyes crinkled. "Admiral, for the past 50 years, the greatest minds on our planet have been preparing for contact with an interstellar power. We ran simulations. We developed countermeasures. We built weapons systems that would make your engineers weep. And then you show up." He gestured at the holographic display in his own command center. "And you announce your intentions with a speech that could have been written by a 12-year-old. The language of the Empire is sacred. Our pronouncements carry the weight of history, I know." General Ackerman's expression shifted, the laughter fatting into something harder. "Admiral, we've heard that speech before. The Xylos Conquered gave us the same speech, word for word, almost exactly. Submit or be destroyed. Your resources are ours. Your culture will be subsumed. They had better delivery, honestly. You should work on your projection." Prax leaned close to Vextel's ear. "The human is referencing the Xylos encounter. He suggests the Conquered made similar demands." "I know what he's suggesting," Vextel snapped. "The Conquered didn't do very well," General Ackerman continued, his voice now carrying an edge that cut through the laughter still echoing in the background. "They're still around, but they don't make demands anymore. They ask nicely." The observation deck humans whooped in confirmation. One of them, the scarred woman, shouted something that sounded like "ask nicely." Vextel's mandibles clicked rhythmically, a nervous tick he had thought he'd conquered in his youth. The Xylos Conquered was a diplomatic alliance, not a military power. Their failure to contain your species is not relevant to our. "Not relevant," the general laughed again, but this time there was no joy in it. "Admiral, the Xylos Conquered had twice your fleet strength and technology, at least 2 centuries ahead of what you're showing us today. We absorbed their entire civilization's worth of knowledge in 6 standard months. We had their ships reverse-engineered in a year. We had their offensive systems integrated into our defense grids in 18 months. Vextel felt his primary heart skip. "That's impossible. The Conquered's technology was supposed to be superior to anything you primitive humans could comprehend." General Ackerman smiled. "We get that a lot. Tell me, Admiral, what's your species' greatest military achievement?" 15,000 years of uninterrupted expansion. The subjugation of 200 worlds. Impressive numbers. How many of those worlds still harbor resistance movements? The silence in the command center was absolute. "How many?" General Ackerman pressed. "Because we've been watching your empire for 40 years, Admiral. We know about the Krell revolts. We know about the Mekari underground. We know your emperor is actually a puppet of the military council that deposed the previous emperor. We know more about your government than your own intelligence services do." The human representative on the observation deck chose that moment to speak. "Admiral, we're not laughing at you. We're laughing at the situation. The Empire is exactly what we expected, and what we expected was something we could actually deal with." "Explain," Vextel demanded. Ambassador Kieran looked at the holographic display of the Imperial fleet, then back at Vextel. "You're not the biggest threat we've ever faced. You're not even the second biggest. You're the third, or maybe fourth. The Xylos Conquered was bigger. The Relian Swarm was bigger. The Stellar Collective was bigger. The Stellar Collective was destroyed by a galactic plague. Yes, we healed them. They owe us their existence. The Swarm, we gave them a reason to rethink expansion. And the Conquered," Kieran smiled. "The Conquered learned that humanity is very good at 2 things, survival and adaptation. Everything else is just implementation." Vextel looked at the display again. The energy signatures from the human system were still resolving. 14,000 defensive platforms, more than the Empire had ever fielded in a single engagement. "Your laughter," he said slowly, "is not mockery, it is relief." "You're starting to understand," Kieran agreed. "We've been waiting for you to arrive so we could stop preparing and start living. You showed up and we realized," he gestured at the fleet. "You're just the next challenge, and challenges we know how to handle." The laughter continued, but Vextel heard something new in it, something that chilled his blood more than any battle cry. These creatures, these violent apes from a blue-green rock, had seen the might of the Galactic Empire and found it insufficient. They had been afraid of something else, something worse. And in that moment, Vextel understood that the laughter was not just relief. It was welcome. Deep within the Imperial archives, buried under 17 layers of classified encryption, protected by AI sentries that had executed their creators in a long-forgotten rebellion, there existed a file category that had not been accessed in 12 centuries. The Xylo's conquered analysis. Vextel had never seen it. His clearance was high, second only to the Emperor's military council, but this file existed in a tier of classification that had been designed to hide the Empire's most embarrassing failure. The absorption of the Xylos conquered had been presented to the public as a military triumph. The reality, as Vextel now discovered, was far different. The conquered had come to Earth in 2197 by the human calendar, 6 standard decades before the current moment. They had arrived with the same diplomatic pomp, the same demands for submission, the same promises of cultural enlightenment. Their fleet had been composed of 300 warships, the most powerful ever assembled in that region of space. Their technology had been a full 2 generations ahead of what the Empire currently fielded. They had expected fear. They had expected awe. They had expected the primitive humans to collapse into grateful submission. Instead, they had received 3 months of war that had nearly destroyed the conquered entirely. Vextel scrolled through the archived data, his chromatophores cycling through colors of shock and disbelief. The human defense had been unexpected. No planetary shields, no orbital platforms, no warships of any significance, just their planetary defense grids and a fleet of vessels that appeared more suited to civilian transport. But the humans had not fought with weapons, at least not in the traditional sense. They had fought with information. The Xylos files described in horrified detail how human operatives had infiltrated conquered computer systems, subverted their navigation protocols, and turned their ship's own weapons against them. The conquered's vaunted AIs, designed to be unbreakable, had been broken in less than a month. The human hacking methods had been so primitive that the conquered security systems had classified them as background noise until it was too late. "Backdoors," Vextel muttered, reading the report. "They exploited backdoors we didn't even know existed." One of his senior analysts, a Xylian named Veth who had been brought from the capital specifically for this research, nodded slowly. "The humans didn't defeat the conquered with superior technology, Admiral. They defeated them with superior understanding. The conquered's technology was designed by engineers who never considered that someone might innovate. Innovate, they violated every protocol of warfare. They didn't consider themselves at war. The humans called it asymmetric engagement." Veth's voice carried a tremor of something that might have been admiration. "They used the conquered's own strengths against them. The conquered's military discipline became a weakness. The humans knew exactly how their commanders would react. The conquered's technological superiority became a weakness. The humans learned how to use their systems against them." Vextel forced himself to read further. The war had ended not with conquered victory but with conquered collapse. The humans had not conquered their former oppressors. They had simply absorbed them. The Xylos conquered now existed as a semi-autonomous government under human protection. Their homeworld had become a tourist destination for wealthy human travelers. Their children learned human languages alongside their own. And the humans had used the conquered's technology to build something that the Empire had never achieved. The Dyson swarm. "Show me the specifications," Vextel ordered. Veth called up the data. What the humans had built around their sun was not a single structure, but millions of interconnected solar collectors, each one capable of harvesting more energy than the entire Imperial fleet consumed in a standard year. The energy readings that had initially fooled the Empire's sensors had been intentionally minimized. I estimate, Veth said slowly, that the humans could power the entire Empire for 1,000 standard years with a fraction of their current output. They could build ships faster than we could destroy them. They could. They chose not to. Vextal stared at the data. The humans had the capacity for interstellar expansion. They had the technology. They had the resources, and they had done nothing with it. The Concord analysis suggests a theory, Veth offered. The humans experienced something called the Great Silence. Around the middle of their 21st century, they realized that the cosmos was not full of intelligent life ready to welcome them. They realized that expansion was not a moral imperative, but a biological impulse they could choose to reject. They chose stagnation. They chose sustainability. Veth's voice had become almost reverent. They built a civilization that could last forever without needing to conquer anyone. They adapted their psychology, their culture, their entire species to the idea that enough was enough. Vextal felt something shift in his understanding. The laughter, the relief, the strange welcome. The humans weren't laughing at the Empire's weakness. They were laughing at how familiar it was. They see themselves in us, Vextal said slowly. 15,000 years ago, they were what we are now, expansionist, militaristic, convinced of their own superiority. They learned better, Veth agreed, and they've been waiting for us to learn the same lesson. The data revealed more. The humans had developed a philosophy they called the Terra Principle, the idea that a civilization's worth was measured not by how much it could take, but by how much it could give. They had transformed their own world from a dying ecosystem to a paradise. They had healed their damaged environment, repaired their fragmented societies, and created a culture that valued cooperation over competition. And they had done all of this while maintaining the capacity for total warfare. The Relian swarm, Veth said, pulling up another file. The humans encountered them approximately 30 standard years ago. The swarm was aggressive, hostile. They attacked human mining outposts in the outer system. What happened? The humans sent a diplomatic team. The swarm sent a battle fleet. The diplomatic team was destroyed along with the mining outposts. The humans. Veth paused, as if the data he was reading had become difficult to process. The humans assimilated the swarm's communication network and began broadcasting messages directly into their collective consciousness. They showed the swarm what human history looked like, the wars, the genocide, the destruction. They showed the swarm what humanity had become and what it had cost to get there. Vextal felt his secondary heart race. They terrified them. They convinced them. The swarm, which had never experienced the concept of empathy, learned it through human broadcasts. Within 3 standard months, the swarm became pacified. They now live in the outer system, sharing Earth's orbit. Vextal sat back in his command chair. The data in front of him represented a fundamental challenge to everything he had been taught. The Empire's military doctrine, its political philosophy, its entire reason for existence, all of it was predicated on the assumption that might made right. But humanity had discovered something different, something that the Empire's finest minds had never considered. Might, when used correctly, could make peace. Does the Emperor know about this? Vextal asked. Veth's silence was answer enough. Of course he doesn't. The military council would never allow the truth about the conquered to reach the throne. Vextal's mandibles clicked with bitter understanding. We built our entire civilization on a lie. The humans saw through it immediately, Veth said. Ambassador Kieran's laughter wasn't mockery, Admiral. It was recognition. He looked at our fleet, our demands, our entire political structure, and he saw what we used to be. Used to be. Veth gestured at the data. The humans went through this, Admiral. 15,000 years ago, they were the Empire, expanding, conquering, believing their own propaganda. And then they faced a challenge they couldn't beat. a challenge that forced them to change. What challenge? The data didn't say. The files ended with a single line that made Vextol's blood run cold. End of analysis. Further information requires human authorization. The Empire, the ancient and powerful empire, the civilization that had conquered 200 worlds and subjugated countless species, had reached the limits of its knowledge. And the only place to get more was from the laughing creatures on the blue-green world. Ambassador Kieran stood on the observation deck of the Sovereign's Will, watching the Imperial fleet's formation shift. The ships had been arranged in a defensive pattern that was, by human standards, 3 centuries out of date. The tactics they displayed were straight out of the Xylo's conquered playbook, attack patterns that had been analyzed and countered long ago. "You're reorganizing for a siege," Kieran observed. Grand Admiral Vextol's mandibles clicked in what might have been agreement. "You have proven to be more challenging than our initial assessment suggested. We are adapting." "Adapting?" Kieran smiled. "That's a good word, we like that word, it's one of our favorites." His companion, Commander Voss, moved to stand beside him. The scarred woman had been quiet for most of the exchange, but Kieran could feel her attention focused on the Imperial fleet. She had the look of a predator evaluating prey. "The Imperial formation is standard for conquest," she said quietly, so only Kieran could hear. "They'll try to establish orbital superiority before committing ground forces. The plan is textbook." "Textbook from which century?" "Ours 19th, maybe 20th. Kieran nodded slowly. The Empire's military doctrine was older than humanity's entire industrial revolution. Their technology was advanced, but their tactics were frozen in time. "Admiral Vextol," Kieran said, raising his voice to carry across the observation deck, "may I ask you a question?" "Proceed." "You've been leading military campaigns for how many standard years?" 83. "And in all that time, have you ever encountered an enemy that laughed at you?" The silence that followed was heavier than any orbital bombardment. Vextol's chromatophores shifted through a spectrum of colors that Kieran's cultural training identified as defensive discomfort. "No," the Admiral admitted, "but we have encountered enemies who employed psychological warfare. The laughter is simply a new form of—" "It's not psychological warfare," Kieran interrupted. "Commander Voss, would you care to explain?" Voss stepped forward, her scarred face unreadable. "Admiral Vextol, your fleet consists of 47 warships, 13 carriers, and 1 dreadnought. Your crew complement is approximately 2 million sentient beings. Your ground forces number approximately 10 million. "Accurate," Vextol confirmed. "You've brought 10 million soldiers to conquer a planet of 3 billion. Your invasion doctrine assumes that our population will either flee or surrender. You've allocated forces for occupation, suppression, and governance. What you haven't allocated forces for is resistance." Vextol's mandibles clicked. "The Empire has conquered 200 worlds. We are familiar with resistance." "Familiar," Voss repeated. "That's a fascinating word choice. Let me tell you what we're familiar with. We're familiar with the concept of total war. We've practiced it. We've perfected it. We're familiar with the idea that a population can be transformed into a fighting force, every man, woman, and child armed and ready to die for their world. We're familiar with guerrilla warfare, with asymmetric engagement, with the kind of fighting that makes traditional military doctrine irrelevant." She gestured at the holographic display. "Your fleet is impressive by galactic standards. We've counted 16 different weapon systems, all of which we've seen before from the Conquered. Your ship's shields are calibrated to deflect energy weapons in the standard pattern. Your communications use encryption algorithms we cracked 3 years ago. Your troop deployment patterns are identical to those used by the Conquered in their first assault on Earth." Vextol's secondary heart hammered. "You're bluffing." "Admiral, we've been preparing for you for 40 years. We've been watching your expansion. We've been analyzing your tactics. We've been reverse engineering your technology from drone observations of your border worlds." Voss smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. There is nothing in your fleet that we haven't seen before. Then why haven't you destroyed us? Vextal demanded. The question hung in the air, the genuine confusion in the Admiral's voice cutting through the diplomatic pretense. Kieran answered, "Because that's not what we want, Admiral. We could destroy you. We could absorb your empire just as we absorbed the conquered. We could become the new galactic power, the civilization that spans the stars, the force that every other species fears." "You're saying you have the capacity for conquest?" "We do," Voss confirmed. "We've had it for decades, and we chose something else." "What?" Kieran gestured at the holographic display of Earth. "You see that world down there? It's a paradise. It took us 15,000 years to build it, but we did it. We healed our wounds. We fixed our environment. We created a society that works for everyone." He turned to face Vextal directly. "Admiral, your empire is built on conquest. You take worlds, you extract resources, you move on. You've never built anything that lasts. You've never created a society that could survive without expansion. You're a shark. You have to keep swimming or you die." The accusation landed like a physical blow. Vextal's chromatophores went pale. 15,000 years ago," Kieran continued, "we were you. We conquered. We enslaved. We committed atrocities that would make your emperor weep. And then we realized that conquest was hollow, that building something lasting was more meaningful than taking something temporary." "The empire is eternal," Vextal declared, but there was no conviction in his voice. "The Xylos conquered thought they were eternal too. They're now our neighbors. They're not eternal, they're just comfortable," Kieran smiled. "And if you let us, we could make you comfortable too." Vextal's tactical officer spoke up. "Admiral, our scans are showing increased energy readings from the human defensive platforms. They're powering weapons." Voss shook her head. "We're not powering weapons. We're powering communications. We're sending a message to your homeworld." "A message?" "Yes. We think it's time the Emperor learned the truth about the conquered, and about his own military council's long history of covering up embarrassing military reversals." Vextal's claws dug into his command chair. "You have no right to." "We have every right," Kieran interrupted. "Admiral, your emperor is a puppet. Your military council has been hiding the truth about humanity's capabilities for 40 years. They knew the conquered was assimilated. They knew the swarm was pacified. They knew everything we've just told you, and they kept it from the throne because admitting the truth would have meant admitting that the Empire's expansionist doctrine was based on a lie." The shock in Vextal's expression was genuine. "The military council would never." "They did. We have records from the Conquered's database that your council tried to destroy. We have transcripts of your own intelligence briefings that have been redacted. We have video evidence of your commanders discussing how to handle the human problem without alarming the throne." Voss's smile was cold. "Your council has been lying to you for your entire career, Admiral." Vextal's world collapsed around him. Everything he had believed about his empire, about his species, about his own place in the universe, it had all been built on deception. "The humans," he said slowly, "are not the enemy." "No, Admiral, we're not your enemy." Kieran's voice had softened. "We're what you could become if you choose to change. We're a future that's possible if you're brave enough to accept it." "Accept what?" "Acceptance of the truth." Kieran gestured at the holographic display. "Your fleet is not powerful enough to conquer us. Your military doctrine is not sophisticated enough to defeat us. Your society is not healthy enough to survive contact with us. You have exactly two choices, Admiral. You can continue the charade, and we will be forced to show your emperor the truth, or you can help us show him the truth voluntarily." Vextal stared at the human ambassador, this creature of laughter and violence and incomprehensible wisdom. "What do you want from us?" "We want you to stop being the Empire," Kieran said simply. "We want you to become something better, something that lasts." The Imperial fleet's formation shifted again, this time into what human tactical analysis recognized as an attack pattern. Voss watched the holographic display with professional disinterest, her scarred face betraying nothing. "They're going to strike," she observed. Kieran nodded. The military council is overcompensating for their embarrassment. They need to show the Emperor that they're in control. Can we stop them without destroying the fleet? Easily. The question is whether we should. Voss considered this. The Imperial fleet's attack pattern was textbook: wave attacks, layered fire support, orbital bombardment preparation. It was the kind of assault that would have devastated Earth if the planet had remained technologically primitive. But Earth had not remained primitive. The Dyson Swarm's targeting systems are calibrated, Voss said. We can disable their weapons without causing significant structural damage. The casualties would be minimal. Minimal by whose standards? By ours. The Empire's standards are lower. Kieran smiled. That's the darkest thing you've ever said. It's the truth. The first wave of Imperial ships began their approach. Voss watched the tactical display, counting the seconds until the attack pattern reached its apex. The Empire's commanders were following their doctrine perfectly, which meant they were predictable. Predictable was vulnerable. Countermeasures activated, Voss announced, disabling weapon systems. The effect was immediate. The lead Imperial ship's energy weapons flickered, died, and refused to reignite. Their missile launchers jammed. Their particle beams became inert. The humans had not used traditional electronic warfare. They had simply overwritten the Empire's targeting protocols with their own. Secondary systems compromised, Kieran read from his display. Navigation, communications, life support, all affected. The Imperial ships began to drift. Their crews, trained to react to enemy fire, had no response to a weapon they couldn't see. They fired no missiles. They launched no fighters. They simply hung in space, disabled. "What have you done?" Vextel demanded, his voice cracking. "We've demonstrated," Voss replied calmly. "Your weapons are useless against us. Your ships are vulnerable. Your entire fleet could be destroyed with a single command." "Then why haven't you?" "Because we don't want to," Kieran stepped forward. "Admiral, we told you we chose something else. We're not conquerors. We're not destroyers. We're people who learned the hard way that violence is a failure of imagination." Vextel's chromatophores cycled through colors of rage, fear, and finally, defeat. "What do you want from us?" "We want you to go home," Kieran said. "We want you to tell your Emperor what happened. We want you to show him the truth about humanity's capabilities and the truth about the military council's deception." "And if we refuse?" Voss's smile returned. "Then we'll show him ourselves. We'll broadcast the complete record of his council's lies to every world in the Empire. We'll reveal the truth about the conquered, about the swarm, about everything they've hidden from the throne." The threat was delivered with such casual confidence that Vextel seemed to shrink. "You can't do that. The Emperor would never believe." "He'll believe it when he sees the video evidence. We have recordings of council meetings. We have classified documents. We have everything we need to bring down your entire government." Vextel looked at the human ambassador, the scarred commander, the grinning delegates behind them. These creatures, these laughing animals from a blue-green world, had become the deadliest threat the Empire had ever faced. And they weren't even trying. "What do you want from us?" Vextel repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "We want you to have the chance to do what we did," Kieran said. "We want you to realize that conquest is hollow, that empire building is a dead end, that there's another way. You're offering us mercy. We're offering you a choice. You can continue being the Empire and we will be forced to respond. Or you can change and we will help you. It's that simple." Vextel looked at the disabled ships around him. 23 vessels drifting in space, their weapons silent, their crews terrified. His fleet had been rendered helpless by a species that hadn't even fired a shot. "The Emperor will never accept this," he said. "He'll order a full assault. He'll bring the entire Imperial Armada to destroy your world." "Let him," Voss's voice was flat. "We've faced worse. We've faced the Conquered's entire military might and won. We've faced the Swarm's biological weapons and adapted. Your Emperor is just another challenge." Vextel felt something break inside him. The certainties of a lifetime, the arrogance of an entire civilization, the weight of 15,000 years of expansion, all of it crumbled in the face of human calm. "Show me," he said. "Show me what you want us to become." Kieran nodded. "Commander Voss, would you care to give the Admiral a tour?" The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, and Grand Admiral Vextel saw the impossible. He had seen planets before. 200 worlds had been conquered under the Empire's banner. He had witnessed orbital bombardments, planetary pacifications, the complete restructuring of alien civilizations. None of it had prepared him for what lay below. Earth was a paradise. Not the primitive paradise of unspoiled wilderness. This was something far more impressive. The human cities were integrated with their natural environment, buildings rising from forests, gleaming structures that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. The skies were clear of pollution. The waters were clean. The air, when the shuttle's environmental systems allowed a sample, was fresh and sweet. "How?" Vextel asked, his voice barely audible. "Hard work," Kieran replied. "Thousands of years of it. Our ancestors made a mess of this world: pollution, climate change, mass extinction. We spent the last 15,000 years fixing it. You have the technology too." Technology was only part of it. The hardest part was changing ourselves. We had to learn to value sustainability over growth, cooperation over competition, peace over conquest. Kieran gestured at the landscape below. "It took time. It took sacrifice, but we did it." The shuttle landed at a facility that appeared to be carved into a mountainside. Vextel was escorted through corridors filled with human scientists, engineers, and technicians, all of whom regarded him with curiosity rather than fear. The demonstration chamber was a circular room with walls covered in holographic displays. Vextel found himself standing beside Ambassador Kieran and Commander Voss, facing a screen that showed the Empire's homeworld. "Your planet," Voss said. "We've been monitoring it for decades. Your military council controls all information flowing to the throne. The Emperor has no idea what's really happening in his empire." "Show me." The holographic display shifted. Vextel saw images of corruption, of military leaders enriching themselves, of entire planetary populations being exploited for resources that never reached the throne. The truth of his empire, laid bare in all its ugliness. "Your military council has been lying to the Emperor for 100 years, Kieran said. "They've been hiding the truth about resistance movements, about the Empire's weakening position, about the economic collapse that's coming. Your civilization is dying, Admiral. It just doesn't know it yet." Vextel felt his legs give way. He sank into a chair that seemed to appear from nowhere, his claws gripping the armrests. "Everything I believed, everything I dedicated my life to." "It was a lie," Voss confirmed. "But it doesn't have to stay that way. You can change. You can help the Emperor see the truth." "How?" "The same way we changed. You look at what you've become, you admit it's wrong, and you start building something better." Vextel stared at the humans. Their faces held no mockery now, no laughter. They were offering him something he had never imagined possible. "Your empire is dying," Kieran continued. "We can help you save it, but you have to accept our terms." "What terms?" "Open the Empire's borders, end the military council's control, give the throne access to the truth." Voss ticked off the items on her fingers. "And accept human observers on your homeworld. We'll help you rebuild." Vextel felt a desperate laugh bubble up from his chest. "You're offering to rebuild the Empire." "We're offering to help you build something better, something that will last longer than conquest ever could." There was a pause. In the distance, Vextel could hear the sounds of Earth, the hum of machinery, the murmur of voices, the laughter he had come to fear and respect. This was a civilization that had found peace, and they were offering the same peace to their enemy. "Why?" Vextel asked. "Why would you help us?" "Because that's what we do now," Kieran said simply. "We help. It's what we learned from our own mistakes." Vextel looked at the holographic display again. His homeworld, his people, his civilization, all of it was built on a lie. And the only path to salvation was through the grace of the laughing creatures who had seen through that lie in a moment. "I accept," he said. "I'll help you show the Emperor the truth." Emperor Thalcresh sat on his throne, surrounded by the splendor of 15,000 years of imperial power. The throne room was a masterpiece of architectural arrogance, a space designed to dwarf any being who entered it. The emperor's chair alone was 20 meters tall, encrusted with the jewels of 100 conquered worlds. And yet, when Grand Admiral Vextal entered with his human companions, the emperor felt small. "Your Majesty," Vextal said, bowing low, "I bring news from Earth." The diplomatic mission was a success. The emperor's voice was a booming echo that filled the chamber. Vextal hesitated. "It was educational, Your Majesty. I've brought representatives from Earth to share their perspective." The humans stepped forward. Ambassador Kieran and Commander Voss had been allowed entry only after extensive security checks. They were unarmed, outnumbered, and entirely calm. "Greetings, Emperor," Kieran said. "My name is Kieran. I'm here to offer you a choice." The Empire does not accept choices from primitive species. The Empire does not understand what it's facing. Kieran's voice was calm, measured, and utterly without fear. "Your military council has been lying to you, Your Majesty. They've hidden the truth about humanity's capabilities. They've hidden the truth about your empire's decline. They've hidden the truth about almost everything." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Vextal stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Your Majesty, the humans have demonstrated capabilities that far exceed our own. Their technology is at least a century ahead of ours. Their military doctrine is impossible." The Emperor's hand slammed on the arm of his throne. "The Empire is the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy." "Your Majesty, with respect, the Empire is powerful only because it's never faced a real challenge." Kieran stepped forward. "We've faced challenges. We've faced species that were more advanced than you, more aggressive than you, more determined to conquer than you. And we adapted." "Lies." The Emperor rose from his throne, his bulk filling the chamber. "You're trying to frighten me with—" "Show him," Voss interrupted. The holographic display in the center of the throne room activated. Vextal had prepared the presentation, selecting images and data that would reveal the truth. The first image showed the Imperial Military Council's secret files. The second showed evidence of corruption. The third showed the resistance movements that had been hidden from the throne. The Emperor watched in silence. His face, normally an unreadable mask, shifted through expressions of shock, rage, and disbelief. "These files are false," he declared. "We have confirmed their authenticity," Vextal said. "Your Majesty, the Council has been lying to you for a century. They've been hiding the Empire's decline. They've been enriching themselves while your people starve." "Silence!" The Emperor's roar echoed through the throne room. "I will not listen to—" "Your Majesty," Kieran interrupted, "we have more than evidence. We have a choice for you." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "A choice. Open your borders, end the Council's control. Let humanity help you rebuild the Empire into something that will last, or we will show the entire galaxy what you've become." The threat was delivered with such calm certainty that the Emperor seemed to physically recoil. "You would expose us." "We would save you," Kieran corrected. "The Empire is dying, Your Majesty. We're offering you a way to build something better, something that will last forever." There was a long silence. The Emperor stared at the humans, his expression unreadable. "Why would you help us?" he finally asked. "You've demonstrated that you could destroy us. You could absorb the Empire just as you absorbed the conquered. Why offer help?" "Because that's what we do now," Kieran said. "We help. We learned that conquest is hollow. We learned that building something lasting is more meaningful than taking something temporary. We learned that the best way to defeat an enemy is to make them a friend." The Emperor sat back down on his throne. The weight of 15,000 years of imperial history pressed down on him, but beneath it was something else, something he had never felt before. Hope. I accept, he said quietly. Show me how to change. The border world of Krell 7 had been contested territory for 200 years. The imperial military had tried and failed to subdue its inhabitants, a stubborn species of rock dwellers who had turned their caves into fortresses and their resentment into guerrilla warfare. Now, the world was about to become the demonstration site for humanity's grand experiment. Ambassador Kieran stood on the observation deck of a human cruiser, watching the Imperial fleet assemble above Krell 7. The ships had been retrofitted with human technology, their weapons disabled, their communication systems upgraded. Commander Voss appeared beside him. The Emperor has agreed to the terms. He's announced the dissolution of the military council. The new government is being formed. Good, Kieran nodded, and the Krell. They've agreed to a ceasefire. They want to see if we're serious. We're serious, Kieran smiled. Let's show them. The human cruiser descended through Krell 7's atmosphere, landing in a valley that had been the site of countless battles. Kieran stepped out onto the planet's surface, followed by Voss and a small team of human observers. The Krell emerged from their caves. They were a squat, armored species, their bodies adapted to a world of seismic activity and subterranean life. Their leader, a massive individual named Thrun, approached the humans with cautious curiosity. "You are the ones who made the Empire stop fighting?" Thrun asked. "We are," Kieran confirmed. "We're here to help." Help? Thrun's eyes narrowed. "Why would you help us?" "Because that's what we do now," Kieran said. "We help." The next few months were a whirlwind of negotiation, reconstruction, and reconciliation. The Krell, who had been fighting for their freedom for centuries, finally saw the end of conflict. The Imperial soldiers who had been sent to conquer them became their protectors. The borders that had separated them became bridges. And at the center of it all were the humans, the laughing creatures who had come not to conquer but to save. On the day the Krell 7 treaty was signed, Ambassador Kieran stood before Emperor Thalcresh and delivered the final blow. "Your Majesty, you've done something remarkable. You've ended 200 years of war not by winning but by making peace. That's a hard thing for a conqueror to do." "It was the right thing to do," the Emperor said quietly. "You showed me that." Kieran smiled. "We laughed when we first saw you, Your Majesty. We laughed because we saw ourselves, the species we used to be, the civilization we escaped from. We laughed because we recognized the lie you were living, and we laughed because we knew we could help you find the truth." "I am grateful," the Emperor said, "but I don't understand. Why did you help us? You could have conquered us, you could have taken everything." "We could have," Kieran's smile faded, "but we didn't want to. We learned that conquest is hollow, that empire building is a dead end, that the only thing worth building is something that will last. And we've helped you build something that will last, Your Majesty. A civilization that will survive without expansion. A species that will thrive without conquest." The Emperor stared at the human ambassador. "Will you stay? Will you help us continue?" "We'll stay as long as you need us," Kieran promised. "But we won't stay forever. You'll have to learn to do this yourself. It's the only way it will last." Years passed. The Empire transformed. The military council was replaced by a council of representatives. The conquered worlds became allies. The resistance movements became partners. And at the center of it all were the humans, the laughing creatures who had shown the Empire how to change. Grand Admiral Vextel, now retired from military service, walked through the gardens of his homeworld. The air was clean. The skies were clear. The children, playing in the fields below, were learning human languages alongside their own. He had never expected to see this. He had expected conquest, subjugation, the endless grind of expansion. Instead, he had found something better. Peace. Ambassador Kieran appeared beside him, his face etched with age but still carrying the calm confidence that had defined their first encounter. "How are you feeling?" Kieran asked. Vextel smiled, a gesture he had learned from humans. "I feel hopeful. It's a strange sensation." "Hope is a good sensation. It's what got us through our dark times." Vextel looked at the human ambassador, this creature of laughter and wisdom and impossible compassion. Why did you help us? Kieran met his gaze. Because we saw ourselves in you, and we decided we didn't want to be that anymore. We wanted to help you become what we had become. Better. Better, Kieran nodded. Different. The kind of civilization that doesn't need to conquer to survive. The kind of species that can look at the stars and see not threats but opportunities. Vextel looked at the stars above. They were the same stars he had seen as a child, the same stars that had inspired the Empire's expansion. But now they seemed different, friendlier. You're a strange species, he said. We know, Kieran smiled, but we're getting better. In the centuries that followed, humanity became a legend. The species that had laughed at the Galactic Empire, that had shown them how to change, that had helped them build something better. A species that had learned from its own mistakes and was determined to help others do the same. And somewhere, in a peaceful garden on a transformed world, Grand Admiral Vextel, now just Vextel, just a being who had been given a second chance, watched the children play and understood. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology. It had never been their military power. It had been something far more dangerous. Their willingness to change. And that was the lesson they had given to the Empire, the lesson that had saved them both. The end.